Hello, everyone, and welcome to Talk Nerdy. It's Monday, April 3rd, and I'm your host, Cara Santa Maria. This week, we are chatting with Annabelle Gurwitch, the author of Wherever You Go, There They Are, stories about my family you might relate to. But before we dive into that, I want to thank those of you who made Talk Nerdy possible this week. Now, remember, I do Talk Nerdy all by myself. That means I book all of the interviews, I sit down, I record them, I edit them, I upload them, I do all the metadata. I also do all of the business stuff around it, like the shipping from the online store, yada, yada, yada. So the only real way that I can do that, I can afford to carve out so much time to do that, is because you guys support the show. Because the last thing I would ever want to do, and will never do, is make you pay to listen to Talk Nerdy. So the reason that this show is free for everybody to listen to is because a handful of those of you who really care about the show have supported it financially over the years. Now, this week, I want to thank those who use the PayPal portal on my website, including John Arco, Mark Portney, and Diane Adams. Thank you guys so very much. And I also want to thank those of you who visited patreon.com/talknerdy to pledge your support on an episodic basis. The biggest supporters over the years so far have been Jeffrey Sewell coming in at number 1, then Brian Holden. Next would have to be Charles Payette. No. Actually, next would be Gabriel Felipe Jaramillo Gonzalez, then the Honorable Husband, then Charles Payette. After that would be Phil T. Bear. And then these are all, and then Timothy Glover. Then it looks like Stuart Ogue, David Lacey. Who would be after that? Christian Jeffrey, Jafe, and Pedro M. Rosario Barbosa, and also Jeffrey Perez. I want to thank those of you, all of you actually, so much for your support over the years. And there are other ways to support the show. You guys know this, I say it every week. You can rate and review on iTunes. You can share on social media. Remember, I'm at Cara Santa Maria on Twitter. I'm also facebook.com/ScienceCara. And the last thing, which I think I might have mentioned a couple of weeks ago, but want to remind you of, is that I do have an online store where we have cool t-shirts and like leather goods and some hand-thrown pottery and things like that that all say Talk Nerdy on them. But also I've gotten a new shipment of Charlie and the Tortoise books in. Now these are written by MJ Mouton, and he actually signed a bunch of the books that I have, and I will sign them as well. I wrote the foreword, and it's illustrated. And it's a beautiful book for young kids, teaching them about evolution, and it kind of takes the story of Charles Darwin as a child, and he meets a talking tortoise, and he helps him understand that all species are connected. It's lovely, lovely. And so if you're interested in that, make sure you visit my store at carasantamaria.com, and you can pick up a book because we finally got more in stock. Okay, guys, without any further ado, I would love to announce to you my newest guest. Her name is Annabelle Gurwitch. She's amazing. She's very active in the kind of secular and atheist community. She is an actress and a writer and a really, really funny, and very successful woman. And she's written a bunch of books before. Her newest one here is called Wherever You Go, There They Are, stories about my family you might relate to. And there's a lot of stuff in here that I think you guys might relate to. There's also some great science in here, and also some kind of funny self-reflection on atheism and secularism. So here she is, guys, Annabelle Gurwitch. Well, Annabelle, thank you so much for joining me today.
I am so happy to be here because I love your collection of little dinosaurs that I'm
I love it whenever I do this in studio. You know, unfortunately, a lot of times when you podcast, you have to do it remotely because people don't live here.
Yes.
But whenever I do it in studio, I get a lot of comments on my dinosaurs.
I love them, and we happen to be neighbors, so that was.
I love that you were able to walk here.
I'm a big walker. I'm trying to, live friendly on the earth.
You know what? I am actually reading right now Alexandra Horowitz's book. I think it's called On Looking, and it's really just about. Let me make sure that's what it's called before I let everybody. Yes, it is, and it's about walking her block 8 different times, each chapter with a different kind of expert eye,
Oh, that's so interesting.
and just all the things she never even knew were there.
That's so
I love it. It's so good. And the first one is with her like 2-year-old toddler. She walks the block,
Oh,
and he
I
sees,
love that.
he sees
I
all
love
sorts of
that.
things she never saw.
That just speaks to me because I think about my career as a writer is just to hilariously illuminate the way you see the world.
Yeah.
And so when you say that, that's like, that's it's like the updated version of John Berger's ways of saying. So
Yeah, exactly. So Annabelle, we have known each other for many years now.
Yes. Yes.
But like you said, you're my neighbor. I'm your neighbor, I should say.
Yes.
I'm much newer to the neighborhood, I think, than you are. How long have you lived in this neighborhood?
I moved in when I was pregnant with my son, and so that's 20 years ago almost.
I still can't get over the fact that you have a kid in college.
I can't
blows
get
my
over
mind.
the fact that I have a kid in college, but he's completely annoying because he's so much like me. Right now, he's studying implicit bias in art, and he's studying James Baldwin, and he's studying painting, and he's studying literature at Sarah Lawrence, and he just argues with me 24 hours a day, and so it's fantastic.
You love it.
Yes, it just requires a lot of coffee.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So you have written a new book, and it's new. You have 3 books. I was looking to see because I, of course, knew You Say Tomato, I Say Shut Up. I think did you publish that around when we first met, or was it older then?
Yeah, I think that was that was my second book. The first book is a book of essays that I edited, and then the last book before this was I See You Made an Effort, and the new book is Wherever You Go, There They Are.
And that's about your family.
It's about my family, but it's really about families and chosen family blood relations. And what happened was I was reading Yuval Harari's Sapiens at the same time as I was reading Sebastian Junger's book, Tribes. And I was thinking about one of the things I gleaned from Harari's book was about how we are living in this modern society with all this technology, but our brains and biology haven't changed in 70,000 years.
Yeah.
And so the needs that we have are constantly being thwarted by the situations we're in. And then, Junger is really writing about loneliness, disenfranchisement, isolation of humans. And so I was thinking about sort of my lifelong desire to, I've always had, like people have penis envy, I've had family envy. So I've always looked at other people's families and confederations of people and wanted to join them. And it started with Star Trek because the Federation they had each other's backs, and they were just, it was beyond race, it was beyond gender, it was a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Sort of, because they would screw up, but it was basically a meritocracy. And when I watched Star Trek as a kid, that was my dream, to be in the Federation. I was that girl who made her own Star Trek uniform, and I had my own transponder, and I would, play in the backyard, and I jump from rock to rock like I was Captain Kirk, waiting to get beamed up when he was, having a fight with some there were always these planets with reptiles, large reptilian creatures.
It was the easiest costumes to make back then.
And also, you have to know, it was shot in the desert outside of Los Angeles. If the film capital had been in, the Pacific Northwest, they would have been in
Yetis or something.
Yeah, so running through woods, in David Duchovny's show. I just forgot the name of it.
X-Files.
X-Files. Yes, thank you. You know what I mean? But it just so happened that they landed on a lot of desert-like planets on Star Trek. So that was my first family that I wanted to join. So when people read this book, they'll see when I say family, I'm really looking at who is our family. And so I start with my family of origin and how I wanted to leave them and my crazy family. And then I look at families I've joined accidentally or on purpose, I say. So I'm looking at the Secular Humanist Confederacy. I'm looking at how corporations use the notion of family to recruit people. I'm work families, people who think that their pets are their families, the fetishization of animals.
You say as my dog is sitting in my lap while we're
Exactly.
recording.
Well, look, your dog is not wearing a dress.
No, that's true.
And but and of course, the thing is everything I believe in, I also have to make fun of. It's not like I don't actually love my cats, and in strange moments thought things like when my son went off to college and I'm an empty nester, like, so what if I did breastfeed this cat? I mean, I am not above anything I make fun of. I mean, it's true. I am completely just people will not speak to me, pet lovers, when I make fun of the fucking rainbow bridge where people or pets are waiting in heaven to greet their. I know it's all over the internet. That there's this pet heaven and they're waiting on the bridge for their owners, so they're waiting to cross over, which just makes me think, well, first of all, does that mean I should stop washing my hands and die quicker? Because if all my dead pets are waiting for me,
That's so sad.
My staying alive is keeping them in pet purgatory.
I know, because pets only live like 15 years.
I know. Also, I didn't really like all my pets. Like, I had turtles, bagels, and lox. Are they on the Rainbow Bridge? Am I going to be stuck with them for eternity? Because they smelled funny. I never want to see bagels and lox again,
Yeah, and I had a cat. I had a cat that I couldn't bring to New York, so I adopted her out to a friend, and now I have no idea where she ended up.
She's on the Rainbow Bridge waiting for you, and she's pissed off that you're not dead yet.
And that I left her.
You left her. So, I can't help myself. I just make fun of everything. But it really started with, when I was in school, I started out as an actress, but I was studying performance theory and I was studying ritual and performance at NYU. And that is really based upon anthropology and in particular, my teacher, Richard Schechner, who was an avatar in the avant-garde theater world, his mentor was Victor Turner, the anthropologist.
Oh, interesting.
And so what we were studying was ritual and performance as it relates to modern theater and how you create liminal time. And that's what got me into acting. It wasn't like I saw the movie Philadelphia Story, which I did, and I loved the movie, To Kill a Mockingbird, but that wasn't it. It was this idea of creating a time out of time, the thing that could happen in theater. And of course, at the heart of that is the function that theater served in communities, in bringing together a community when you share in this liminal time, which has been shown to create what they call communal effervescence. It creates a bonding experience. I mean, anyone who is, it's why one of the reasons why people like going to church or to synagogue or chanting. I happen to love all that. I'm just not interested in God, a patriarchy, or in the Bible. But other than that, I love it.
Which is why you see this weird splintering within sort of the secular atheist humanist community. Some people really want these church-like atmospheres, and some people are like, that's exactly what we're against.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I write about in this book is about this confederacy of secular humanist groups. And what interested me in that world as one of the families that I'm looking at is that there are many. I was never that person, and it might be because I had other urban tribes. I had, when you live a life as an artist, you often do have a tribe. I don't know if you scientists feel this way, but
I think more and more we do, especially
because you have to, because there's a marginalization.
And
right?
especially for me in science communication, like I think when you're in science and you're in the lab, you have that tribe. But now that I'm out of the lab and I'm in science communication, I've talked about this before on the podcast, moving to LA, feeling very lost, feeling like I didn't have any friends and I couldn't really find my people, and then finding my people. And now I have a very core group, to the extent we are so, quote, tribal, to the extent that we have a name and a brand. We are the Nerd Brigade.
I love that. I would like to be Nerd Brigade adjacent.
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you.
Please.
Thank you. Because I'm a science geek. I always say that it's not really true. I always say that I was a C- science student. It's not true. I was a D science student. But my chemistry teacher in high school, he agreed to give me a C- because I was going to lose my entry to NYU with a D, but he just made me promise that I would never enter science or medicine.
No, that's so sad.
I know. But it really it's a good thing because I'm not good at numbers, but I love theories and I am just deeply fascinated by all things scientific.
And you have a good grasp, too, because you, I think, are a skeptical thinker, but also a creative thinker. Because a lot of times I think that's the core of being a scientific thinker and being somebody who can communicate these ideas so well, right? You're a brilliant writer and you're so freaking funny, but you also have an outlook on life that is simultaneously, which a lot of people think is impossible, but it's absolutely necessary for being a scientific thinker, simultaneously creative and open-minded and also incredibly skeptical.
Oh, well that is my goal and I hope that's my beat. But so back to this, what we were saying though. So, the theater tribe was always my tribe that took me in when I was wanting to just my suburban family and this craziness of we were this like rich poor family, very up down. It was very unstable.
Yeah.
So the theater, which is hilarious because
the theater was stable.
I know. What's less stable? But the theater takes in people who are disenfranchised. It's the mothership of the disenfranchised teenager. And luckily I started before there was the internet and everyone had a camera, because if my portrayal of Linda in Death of a Salesman at age 10 had been filmed, I would be a shut-in today because it was so humiliating. But so luckily I was, not...
We all got to start somewhere, right?
Yeah, at Temple Beth Shalom in Miami Beach, Florida. So, so I was never that person who felt like I needed to join a secular humanist group,
because you sort of had that aspect of your life fulfilled.
But what happened is, and I write about this in the book, I had this moment where I was on the internet, and this was a couple years ago when the refugee crisis, not that there haven't been refugees for quite a long time, fleeing famine, we're really, of course, as we know, at the start of seeing climate refugees, right? So, but when people started taking boats in the massive numbers in the Mediterranean, I was watching a video on the internet, and there's this people who look like me, Americans, I could tell by their accent, helping people off of boats to a Greek island. And I was so moved. I thought, this is something I want to do. I'm like a church lady without the church, right? My son and I worked at a soup kitchen. He was actually bar mitzvahed in the soup kitchen, where we had volunteered together. I'm that person.
Yeah.
So I was watching this video, and I took out a pencil, very old school here, and I was going to write down the name of the organization, because it was obviously a video made by an organization, and see like, how can I want to go over and do this. The guy turns to the camera. This really good-looking guy, and he says, I just want these refugees to have a great experience with Christians. And I thought, oh, wait, no. So I thought, wait, no.
Like, make sure you give them food before you give them Bibles. You know, it's, oh, God.
Yeah. And so that led me to the Sunday Assembly, which is one of the numerous secular humanist confederations that exist out there. And of course, they had a project where they were sending holiday packages to members of the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers. And I was so blown away by this, but at the same time skeptical. So I did the packages, and then I took it upon myself to see who gets these packages. So I contacted the Military Association of Atheists and Freethinkers, and they connected me with people who received packages at bases overseas, because I, of course, kind of wasn't quite sure where they were going and what effect it was having. So I had to investigate, and I talked to service members from all over the world, in Bagram, in Bahrain, who were getting these packages. And then I became an advocate for the organization.
I love that.
And yet I still make fun of everyone. And I just can't help it. But, you know, that's why that chapter, I'm really interested in how, you know, why that existed, and at the same time making fun of it and looking at the ways that it has also been limited by a patriarchy, like so many organizations. So I have to sadly make fun of and be skeptical about just about everything that I like.
I would say happily. And of course, the chapter in the book is called "And They Shall Enter Singing the Songs of Mumford and Sons."
Yes, because that refers to, you know, one of the things that marks a community or a family is this kind of liminal experience that's created. And that's one of the tensions within the secular humanist world. Do we make it churchy? Don't we make it churchy? Because singing together also has been shown to add cohesiveness to a community. And one of the problems, or let's say challenges, it's a first world problem for sure, of the community is, can we ever get past the song Imagine? Is that going to be our...
Are there any other songs out there?
And so at the Sunday Assembly, they play like Mumford and Sons songs, and they play Death Cab for Cutie, and they play... And so the question is like, will you walk into... will the Vatican turn... If the secular humanists, you know, if we win and we take over Vatican City one day, if that is in fact the aim, which of all taking over and then and the sound of Mumford and Sons will ring out, and we will all be singing "I Will Wait," and people who don't know the lyrics, they'll be humming along because there was never a time they didn't know that song, just like those old spirituals. And so I'm really wondering what that will be like in the future. So
that is hilarious and ridiculous and hilarious.
But it could, but in a sense, it's as random as, well, why are we all singing "We Shall Overcome"? It became, it's a great song, but it's okay, maybe that's a classic, but so I just have to make fun of everything.
So, okay, yes. You wanted to read a passage from this chapter.
I will. And
I'm so excited.
I just don't want people to hate me. By the way, so I enlisted Lisa Randall.
Yes.
In this book, because she appears in a couple places, because I also take issue with the positive thinking movement and their appropriation of quantum physics.
I think
I'm
that you
really against that.
Me too, and I think that you introduced me to Barbara Ehrenreich.
Yes.
I think you told me to read Bright-Sided, and it changed my life.
Yes. Barbara, of course, is most well known, and she and I are pals. We're doing an event together in D.C. coming up in the next few months. Her book that she's most known for is, and we'll go back to this in a second, what we were just talking about. Her book is it's Nickel and Dime.
Yes.
And that was, she went out and she tried to experience what it's like to be a low-wage worker, and it's sort of a modern it's a version of Studs Terkel's working. And I met her when I did my project on being fired in America. And Barbara's book, Bright-Sided, though, which is a lesser-known work of hers that I think is really my favorite, is about how the positive thinking movement, you could really link that to just about every trend that is frightening and the denigration of science in the world today and the fungibility of facts.
Yes.
Because this positive thinking movement, that her introduction to that was when she had breast cancer and she entered the pink world. Pink ribbons, think positively, you will cure your breast cancer. And this kind of, and she was going, it was always about having a positive attitude as a quantifiable way of dealing with your health.
And of course, the survivors are survivors, but the people who die are victims. And it's this whole kind of self-blame, really negative psychological movement.
And she's, she started with that premise of how that people, what happens is, of course, if you can't cure yourself, what did I do wrong? Did I not think positively enough? But you can really extrapolate from that an entire movement in our culture where facts are interpretive. Where do we get to alternative facts? Where do you get to this idea that, no, facts are facts, science is science. You have cancer, when this was, she had breast cancer. That breast cancer wasn't because she thought negative thought. I mean, this is,
it's so crazy that people think
it's
that.
It's so crazy, but it sort of talks about the malleability of facts. And I think that, and she actually relates it to the stock market and trends and this belief, where belief and feelings become as sort of weighed in that flat world as facts, and the danger of that. And I find that book to be very prophetic.
Yes.
It was to what we're seeing today.
Absolutely. Well, there's so much utility in that book that I think it will always be prophetic. Like, because people are always going to fall victim to it. It's basically, for me in a lot of ways, an entree, because I was always in the atheist movement, not really like, and obviously this is a big part of what we're talking about today. Like you, I have never felt the need or really been too absorbed in the, quote, movement or in any of the institutions behind it. But I've been an atheist since I was 15, and I've always been outspoken about that. I don't think I found myself identifying as a, quote unquote, skeptic until around the time when I was reading that and really starting to understand why it's so important to speak up about the malleability of facts.
Right.
All right, guys, let's get back to the show.
Right. And I think that because we see, that's one thing you said about, the science community, when you start to become it's just shocking to even have this in one sentence, a marginalized community, which scientists are.
How is that the case?
It's just a disbelief, right? But because of that does draw people together. And that is, for me as well, why I'm going to be touring with Richard Dawkins, why I've stepped up, because of this encroachment of religion into government, because of a potential repeal of the Johnson Amendment. Besides those really big things, it's the small ways.
Yeah, it's the kind of institutionalized, systemic stuff.
With climate change and all. And it was science, the denigration of science, that's why I feel I have to step up as well. And I think that it calls upon us to do that at this moment. And so I hope I'm not making so much fun of it that I don't think I have that kind of power. I mean, I think, I think when you lend your voice to something, even in humor, it does a good thing. But I was going to say about Barbara's thing. So in this book as well, I also did my own version of this by with trying to get a job in the gig economy in the online world of doing work. So I did a Barbara Ehrenreich experiment of the gig economy and the loneliness of the gig economy, which I feel is an underserved topic of what that does. We as humans now spend so much time. We live in a different way, of course, than we ever did in the ancient world in terms of so many people live alone, or you're isolated with
Yeah.
your family. It's like a hostage situation. And you think about this, that, you weren't as subject to the individual psychology of the people who gave birth to you when you lived in a village.
Absolutely
when
not. Yeah.
childcare and when activities were more communal. Now you can be so isolated, and people living alone. This isn't how we were meant to live.
Yeah.
And our online world does not satisfy the need for community. And work community is a really big part of our identities as modern, in our chosen families and our urban tribes now. And people who work in the gig economy don't have that.
Yeah.
And I don't have the statistics on this because I don't think it's been studied yet. But I hope someone out there will start studying the levels of depression and isolation that people who are living in the gig economy feel. I mean, when you, I use Uber, I use Lyft, but when I see those drivers, and I think about, and now they're the ones in the gig economy who have even more social contact.
Yeah, because there's somebody in the back seat they can talk to.
There's all these industries where you work online, like proofreading and doing that sort of thing, where you're just alone with your computer all day. You are just in a digital sweatshop.
Yeah.
And you're toiling away, and you don't even have, like, I had an aunt who worked in the garment industry. She worked in the sweatshops in New York, in the sewing factories. At least you had another lady next to you that you could say, "This sucks." You don't have anyone, and that's not good for our species. But okay, do you want to hear me make a little fun of the appropriation of quantum physics?
Quantum woo.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right, you ready?
Yep.
So. This is what's going to get me. I'm going to be like on the blacklist at the Sunday Assembly.
Sunday Assembly shit list. Yes. Annabelle Gurwitch.
Yes. And I hope I don't pronounce his name wrong. So the day I was there, one of the days I was there, here's a little bit from the book. The featured speaker was Dr. Fouad Dizadi Basmani, a fellow at the London School of Economics and professor at one of the UCs in the philosophy of probability. He was impossibly good-looking. It seemed unlikely he didn't have a degree in handsomeness. He told us that he would be speaking on a concept that was a lot like the premise of the TV show Fringe. Now, that show, if you didn't watch it, it followed the chaotic disruption caused when parallel universes overlapped. And I was such a fan of the series that I once stayed awake for an entire cross-country red-eye because one of the show's stars was on my flight, and I felt compelled to watch as her chest rose and fell with each breath while she slept, which qualifies as stalkery in any universe. I took notes on his speech. Inflationary cosmology. There are other potential U's. Batshit crazy. Wait, is that a legitimate scientific term? Truth important if true. Possible world semantics. Quantum events. Infinity universe. Infinity pool. Wait, might not have heard this, but going for a cool dip is always welcome in Los Angeles. Quantum suggests that there is an infinity of universes. Quantum, again with the quantum of quantums. Does he have a licensing deal with the word quantums? Jam jar water. Birkenstocks. Now, I don't recall what the note about jam jars and Birkenstocks had to do with the talk. Was he drinking from a jam jar? Maybe. Others in the crowd world, you see that a lot these days. Mason jars have supplanted reusable water bottles in the hipster ethos. Anyway, this was this was my but my whole speculation is that I have no idea what he was talking about, except that he probably landed a development deal at the Sci-Fi Channel afterwards. Anyway, I have to make fun of those things, and I'm sure that that handsome professor, I don't know, whatever he's doing, I wanted to be doing it.
But it's important, it's important to be able to take the piss out of anything, because if you can't do that and you're too serious about anything that you're engaged in, then you're not going to be able to see anybody else's perspective.
That's right. I mean, I don't think, as I said, no one's looking to me to I'm doing damage to quantum physics, But I do talk about in another place in the book how I have Lisa Randall quoted about how, these positive thinking mantras like The Secret, the woman who wrote that, Rhonda Bynes, was quoted as saying, "When I read about quantum physics, I instantly understood it." And of course, I have Lisa saying, even quantum physics, I don't understand quantum physics.
And
if
they
you
went
think you do, you're wrong.
Yeah, and they went to school for at least 8 years of advanced study, oftentimes 15, with all their postdocs.
Well, but this is being used by these people of like the law of attraction, like it's a law, like it's like gravity.
Well, we saw it in that movie, What the Bleep Do We Know?
Yes.
That was a perfect example of like bastardization of quantum physics. And unfortunately, a fair amount of like legitimate physicists were duped by that film because they were interviewed and then
and then
taken out of context.
Used. So I actually, when I started writing, I was a commentator at NPR, and I had this sort of science moment of like, what happened was I started out with where I did this piece, a field piece on. It just so happened that my kid had someone in his grade school who works at the Jet Propulsion Lab. He's a scientist.
I'm assuming that your kid's friend's dad.
Yes, my kid's friend's dad.
Not your kid's friend.
Yes, and we were talking one day, and I was asking him what the most important scientific development was in the last 50 years, and then I thought, well, one of the problems with science education, which I think we're number 34th in the world, probably lower already in the few months of the Trump presidency. Now we're number 42nd. Like, yay us, right? So why is that? And my speculation was that it's because their kids' parents. There was a whole generation that even came before our kids now that didn't have that emphasized. When I was growing up in the 1970s, my high school in Florida, science wasn't required, but what was required was a class called Americanism versus Communism.
Wow.
Not capitalism versus communism, Americanism. And just think about that, right? But not science. Did not. So, it's a whole generation so then how do we help our kids, So I did a piece for them where I was asking the parents of my kids on my son's baseball team questions, and their answers for what was the most important science were everything from like the microwave oven to, runless pantyhose Spanx.
No.
I mean, it was just sort of terrifying, it's really scary. And so I just sort of got the idea that what if I, as a comedian, could take science and make it interesting. Without being a scientist.
Yeah.
Being a C- science student, could I get, how could I do this? So I was doing a piece on global cooling, and I cannot actually remember why I was doing that piece, but that was interesting to me. But in any case, so I had done an interview with a climatologist about the phenomena in the 1970s of particulates that were in the air that cooled the earth, hence global cooling. Why that wasn't, why we weren't, one of the reasons why we didn't see a straight trajectory of warmer climate.
Yeah, why is the line a little wiggly?
Why
even though
is the line wiggly?
Yeah.
So I ran into this problem, and this was at NPR, that I couldn't run the piece without having a climate skeptic give an opinion. And it was the idea of, we have to give parity. But I even as a non-scientist, I was arguing, but there is no parity here. This is not a legitimate position. There is one, it is explainable by science. Why are we giving time to this person? And I lost. And I just hated that piece. It's something in me, it died a little, And so then I made it this mission. So not everyone reads the footnotes in my books.
Footnotes are always the best part, I think.
My footnotes aren't source. It's not where I'm getting the sources.
Yeah.
I actually include sources in the text, but it's sort of fun little facts.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, one of my chapters is about sisterhood and how I have a lot of friends who I didn't grow up with, and I think that women may, sometimes I wouldn't know what the numbers are, but I find that I've been able to make adult friendships as a woman, even along with childhood friendships, just as strong, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's unique to women, but I certainly think that we are capable of that.
I definitely find that I hang out with my girlfriends way more often than my boyfriend hangs out with his guy friends.
Anecdotally speaking, that would be my experience. But so then I was reading research about bonobo culture, and one thing I did not know was that the female. I knew it was a matriarchy, but it's a soror. They're based on sororal bonds, but I didn't know that's adult sororal bonds. So the bonobo female leaves her tribe of origin, goes out and seeks other females to join their tribe as an adult.
Yeah, it's actually why you can transplant female bonobos across zoos, but you can't really move men around because men don't leave, right? They grow up with mom.
Men Don't Leave was a terrible movie. I did with Jessica Lange. This is my acting background. I get to take it there.
I love it. But the females can, just like in many other cultures, like in chimp cultures where an alpha male will get, and the other men have to leave and find their own tribe to become the alpha male of. In bonobo culture, it's like that with the women.
I think that's so interesting. Super cool.
Yeah.
And I think that we, as female Homo sapiens, we do that as well. And I think we do that also because of the way we live with moving around so much and making these bonds. And so, if you happen to read the footnotes in my book, you will get a little bit of information about, bonobo culture.
Love that.
And you will, and also something that I did not realize until recently was that bonobos have been observed tool making. And in fact, they make sex tools, and they make they carve little French ticklers out of twigs, and that sounds really painful. But and next week they're going to be on sale in Brooklyn. We're importing now artisanal French ticklers carved in the
DRC.
50% of the profits will be donated to the Amazon rainforest. Get your authentic bonobo, not used. These ticklers have not been used on bonobos, but were carved by bonobos. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
I love it.
I like that you think you're reading a book of comedic essays, but you're also getting, you're getting. I am particularly interested in anthropology, but I'm also interested in other areas of science. So, you get some of that too. And I really, I don't know that every one of my readers goes for that, but if you want to skip over it, you can. But the
science is good. Don't skip it. None of the people listening to this podcast, I think, would skip over that.
Yes.
I have to ask you, Annabelle. So you started, as an actress, and then of course you've had a really interesting career. You still do stage acting, right?
I do.
You do. Mm-hmm. And you've had a really kind of interesting television career.
Yeah.
Not always acting, a lot of unscripted work too.
Yes. I fell into comedy as that was just an accident.
When did that happen? How did that happen?
Just one of those vagaries of show business.
Yeah.
I only wanted to work on stage. That was my thing. But of course, you have to make money, and not that I don't love. I mean, my gosh, we are in this sort of peak TV time where there's so much. I find there's so much interesting television, and I'm not the only one.
And
obviously.
across so many platforms now too.
Right. And of course, it's so much more interesting than when I started acting. Dynasty was the big show. So, now you can watch, I love The Path on Hulu, which is about that cult. And Breaking Bad, there's been so many, I can name 1,000 great shows. I started working in television and I started making movies. And then I just somehow people thought I was funny, and I was only doing Shakespeare and Jacobean tragedies as an actress, and this very avant-garde work, adaptations of Brecht, Buchner, and Wedekind, very popular stuff on stage.
Sure, sounds like
oh yeah, people loved what I was doing, and I just sort of fell into comedy, and it was an accident, and I did this show on HBO called Not Necessarily the News, which actually started me writing. It got me interested in satire and in politics, and then Dinner and a Movie I did for many years. It was just a complete accident. At the same time I was doing those shows, I was starting to write, and now the writing has just really taken over my life. And it is this funny tension, though, because I am this person who really likes community. So actually, there was just an article in the LA Times about, I have a writers collective down the street. We have offices, and that's been a great thing for me because I find writing very solitary. And as it's a solitary pursuit.
Absolutely.
And that's hard for me. I was a collaborative artist for many years, and it's hard. So we have an office full of mostly women writers, but our guys don't stay as long. It's sort of like the lifespan. They kind of, but we also have men too, and everyone is mostly authors, people who write different scripts or animated or do. It's great. It definitely serves that community.
It cuts through exactly what you were investigating in kind of the gig economy.
Yes, exactly. And I think that this is one of those sort of hacks that we have to have in our modern living. We really need that. And I think that it just takes a lot more because we're not built that way now. And of course, what are we seeing in our country right now? We're seeing this breakdown of who we are. Are we these libertarians who everyone's out for call me when your house is on fire. Call me when you need a cup of sugar, whatever.
Yeah. And even, even beyond that, I feel like it's not, at least there's some sort of cognitive basis to that kind of thinking. I disagree with it. I think it's lacking the moral and ethical overtones that, to me, are central to my sort of, quote, liberal or progressive viewpoint. But at least I cognitively understand a libertarian viewpoint. But what I don't understand right now is just this insane American exceptionalism and this, like, obscene kind of inability to look at past mistakes and learn from them.
Right. I know. There's also, it's a domino effect as well with this sort of moment where we're at this precipice of really thinking about the effects of climate change on us as a planet as opposed to individual places with borders.
Yes.
Coincidentally, there's a story in my book about sea level rise in the Atlantic coast, which I get to sneak in there because I found out that I inherited a piece of land on a barrier island where I'm from in Alabama. And it is one of the bellwethers for Atlantic coastal erosion. And
So is this land still above water right now?
My land is only above water because my grandparents didn't have enough money to buy on the beach, which is now underwater.
Wow. So it's because they were too poor to be close enough to the ocean.
Yes.
But eventually yours will be beachfront.
Yes. If we don't keep doing beach renourishment.
Jesus.
And it is one of those, and so it just speaks to how every story is related to science. My inheritance when I heard about this, that I inherited a piece of land on an island, I'm like, I'm rich. Finally, my dream has come true. I thought I came from a family that had no money. I have paid more in taxes. And of course, I'm paying taxes in Alabama. Think about it, right?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
red state. I'm a taxpayer there, but my inheritance is being thwarted by sea level rise. You cannot. I mean, so that just even speaks to how can we possibly? You can't live and not be interested, affected by the events on the planet.
And yet we have
I know.
leaders who it's like are literal ostriches with their heads in the sand. Like,
Right. And you know what happens down where my land is it's you see that there's these competing interests. So you think that in Alabama, for instance, seafood is a really big
yeah. We all saw Forrest
industry,
Gump.
right?
Yeah, we know about
exactly.
them shrimp and boats.
That's exactly where I'm from. It's more wetlands, so I have land in Bayou La Batterie, and so that's mussels and oysters and other kinds. It's not. We're not
Crabs?
really,
Are there
we're
crabs
not shrimp
there?
people.
That's more Maryland,
No,
huh? That's
not
farther
crabs.
north. Yeah.
We're shrimp. We do have shrimp, but
Yeah.
so the thing is that this dovetails with the seafood industry, but there's also very large chemical industry and oil industry. They were really hard hit, not only by hurricanes and increased weather patterns, but also by the BP oil spill. So now, you're going to lessen the regulations, and that's going to, but they need the jobs, and so there's so many pressures on these people down there. And when the leadership doesn't help to educate people who may not have that level of awareness of all these things that we need
Yeah.
to mitigate the effects of both the climate and industries that do damage to the
Yeah.
environment, what you get is the perfect storm for we're bringing new jobs, but how?
Yeah,
So
it's like we're going to help you feel better in the next few months at the expense of the next few years.
right.
Yeah.
And if you happen to be, if you're a disenfranchised person who is low income, and let's face it, the economic basis down there is very low. So
Yeah.
that means the schools, it's going to be more difficult. So then
Across the board, it's depressed.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it's hard to say, oh, don't take a leap at that money. Don't do that.
Completely. I mean, it's like, it's no wonder that individual constituents across the country find themselves enamored with the short-term solution because they need it. We need it.
Right.
But the problem is that the leadership, like you said, needs to better inform the constituency. And beyond that, we have to find a balance. There's always got to be an answer that's a little bit in the short term for a lot more in the long term.
Right. Now, I mean, this goes to, honestly, the theme of this book is really, and I hope people will see this, because the subtitle of the book is Stories About My Family You Might Relate To. I mean that as in a bigger sense than my blood relations. And I hope that that people will read more than one chapter so they'll see that, because it's a collection of essays that, for me, the intent was to add up to be a pain against tribalism, and to really, I mean, that I, as a coastal elite, which I could be seen as, I'm a taxpayer in Alabama.
Yeah. And you're from there.
I'm from there originally, yeah. If we could possibly see ourselves, it seemed like we were about to do that. Before a few months ago.
It's true.
If we could see ourselves not being bound by walls or borders, and this idea that attracted me, as a child, this idea of the Federation. I write about Kurt Vonnegut's book Slapstick, and it's not a great book, but it was about the idea that in this dystopian future, there would be these worldwide families. And when you think about it, Vonnegut actually, when I did some research while I was writing this book, I didn't realize he had an anthropology background.
Kind of makes sense, right?
I thought he just did a lot of acid.
Yeah.
I thought he was just doing a lot of acid. Now I understand that he was really writing to these really deep themes about disenfranchisement of people. And so I hope that people will see through the comedy and the making fun of things, this argument towards a larger vision of humanity, one that includes very handsome professors of modal realities and whatever. But, yes, they should be included. And if they want to wear Birkenstocks, just I don't know. I'm against too much man foot. I'm all for.
I'm a little against man foot too.
I'm against
with you.
Man foot. I'm against. I'm against a lot of feet. I don't think feet are our best feature as humans.
And I have a handful of friends who refuse to admit that, and they wear their Birkenstocks proudly. Actually,
I know it's like really big. Like it's like a trend that came back.
It's a resurgence. I'm not a fan. But also, what's better, the Birkenstock or the Birkenstock with the black sock?
Okay, this is a question for the ages. I'm gonna say that Birkenstock with.
Yeah, I think that's my electrician 10 minutes early.
Oh, I think Birkenstock with the black sock is actually better than Birkenstock with just the foot.
Interesting. Yeah, I might agree. It's like a bandage for the foot.
Yes,
covers it up.
Birkenstocks with or without socks. Oh, we could be debating this.
I know. I could really go either way. That's true. Question for the ages. So I have to ask you about the cover of your book.
Yes.
Because it's so funny. It's for those. I hope you're Googling it right now and putting it in your shopping cart. But for those who aren't actively looking at it, it looks like a picture from the 70s.
Yes, it is.
It looks like, why is your family in a tiny dinghy? Was this a Photoshop thing, or did you actually take a family photo in a dinghy?
Oh, those clever book cover art people. Yes. No, of course it was taken in a mini mall in Wilmington, Delaware, right? But here's a little secret. Actually, I'm just writing something about this now. So, it's a picture of my family, and someone had the very clever idea of it's like a sinking ship. They're in a dinghy. They're a huge, big family in a tiny little boat, which I love.
I love it too, because you absolutely don't fit. There's no way you could have made it out into the middle of the water like that.
I know.
You would all be fallen in.
So it's a book about, when people say, what's it about? I give this one sentence description. No matter how hard you try to escape your crazy family, you just end up in another crazy family. So in the picture, I always looked at this picture and I'm like, I look like I'm trying to get out of this family. I'm serious, and the rest of my family looks like they're just like suburban people.
Yeah,
and
I look pretty happy.
I look like I'm being marched from a pogrom. I'm very serious.
None of you, by the way, look related.
That's funny. That's really funny.
Sure of you.
Well, the funny thing is, there's one face in there that is not a real face, because one of my cousins declined to be photographed. She wanted her face removed. And I thought, what says more about families than someone not wanting to be pictured with our family?
So one of the people in here is like a stock photography face?
Yes. And so I get to, this has reminded me of Jacques Derrida's theory of the absence of presence and the presence of absence. So we've named her Cousin Monique. I don't... Name withheld by request. Cousin Monique's face either comes from a stock footage, which I looked for her on the internet in pictures of depressed white women. I couldn't find her. So I think she's actually a collage.
Yeah.
But it has a Mona Lisa effect. It's really hard to see what Cousin Monique is thinking about, because it's sort of like a mouth here, eyes from somewhere else. And I have the Derrida question of, is she giving us the gift of the absence of her presence, or is the presence of her absence a stronger a statement that she's made. I'm not sure which one, but cousin Monique has made a very bold statement.
Yes, she has.
Yes, she
and
has.
she missed her chance.
She did.
That's
miss
all I'll
her
say.
chance. But I like having cousin Monique because we're like a family of like Lisas and Mindys, the very 1970s names. But now we've got a Monique.
Oh, it's very exotic.
Yes.
As exotic as a white Jewish girl's name could be.
Exactly. And it fits in with Jacques Derrida too.
I love that. Annabelle, okay, first of all, I'm so happy that you wanted to sit down with me.
Yes.
I'm so happy that we've sort of reconnected. I mean, I
Yes.
see you periodically at like atheist events and secular humanist events and things like that, but I'm really excited that I think now we can reconnect. We can go on like a hike.
Yes, I hike past your house every
So
day, which
funny.
is hilarious.
Yeah, we could talk about the life things. I could bring Killer. Killer's the funniest on a hike because the first half he's good and the second half he becomes like a rag doll. And I either have to drag him or carry him.
Me too.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing. I'm so glad that you have become such a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm having an aphasic moment. You've become a writer who writes a lot.
Prolific.
I kept wanting to say prophetic because we said prophetic earlier. I'm so glad you've become such a prolific writer because you really have a talent. I mean, you have a talent on the stage and on film. I've seen you. I've seen you in
It's
plays
really
and I've seen you on
nice. Thank you. I
television.
appreciate that.
And it's always weird, right, when you see your friends on TV and you're like, it's still to this day, living in LA, having tons of friends on TV. Every time one of my friends is on TV, I'm like, no shit, I lose my mind.
See, I am just such a low-level human. I'm just like, it's amazing I have shoes on that match. Being on TV is beyond. I'm just like,
Right?
I got dressed today. I've got very low standards of what's exciting.
I
but
love it
thanks.
because you're just so funny, and I think you really do tap into something that is universal in all of us. So you don't have to know Annabelle's family because her family really is a lot like yours.
Yeah. Well, there's there is just no end of dysfunction in every family, chosen or blood relation. So.
And when you meet somebody
Yes.
who's like, my parents are still married and they love each other and I'm very close to all of my
They're just not your people.
There's something wrong
No, there's
there.
either they don't know or maybe they're just, I actually just think those are just different kinds of people that I just don't know and probably don't want to know.
I might
They're just
agree.
not
I
my
might agree.
people.
Not my people.
They're just not mine.
Yeah, I doubt any of those people are listening to the show right
I
now.
doubt it.
Well, thank you for coming on. It was so much fun. And guys, wherever you go, there they are. Stories about my family you might relate to. Do we say bookshelves anymore? It hits digital bookshelves.
Yes, it hits your digital bookshelf. It's also available in some dusty warehouse in Amazon.
Yeah.
Please liberate my book. Please set it free. A robot. Please get a robot to. Actually, it's real people who do that. I just learned
that's
that.
awesome.
Yes. Or books. Go to your indie bookstore.
Yes,
April 18th.
I
Is
recommend.
the on sale date.
April 18th, go to your indie bookstore. But if you really don't want to, you could probably preload it in your cart now. So I highly recommend it. And again, thanks for joining me. And everybody listening, thank you for coming back week after week. I'm really looking forward to the next time we all get together to talk nerdy.